Hello, Kathy.
We're back.
We're back. So, for those of people out there who don't know who we are, my name is Angela Tabak, and I live in southwestern Alberta, about as far southwest as you can get without ending up in Montana or BC.
Mhm.
And I've got my good friend Kathy Flett here, and we are here to talk about Alberta independence today, and today is the day after the coronation of Mark Carney. So, um, good time to talk about these types of things. It kind of went exactly how everybody thought it was going to go, didn't it, Kathy?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so Kathy and I have some experience when it comes to Alberta independence and the fight for Alberta sovereignty. Um, and those experiences have kind of led us to where we are today. We have something that we want to discuss, some ideas that we're
Yeah.
excited about. But first off, I think we should probably introduce ourselves and kind of give a little synopsis for those who don't know us of what our experience has been when it comes to Alberta independence. So, Kathy, why don't you go first? Because you've got more experience than I do in this. You go
Mm.
back a little bit further than I do.
Little bit, a little bit. It's also interesting that today is Commonwealth Day, and we're
Right.
talking
Happy
and
Commonwealth Day.
happy Commonwealth Day, and Carney's crowned, and the place is still a mess, and it will be probably forever unless Albertans want to do something about it, which
Mm.
is what got me involved. What am I? Almost 6 years, 5.5 years ago. And so I just kind of hit the end of my rope, always interested in politics and always tried to follow it. Didn't always do a good job, but always tried to follow it, always tried to be that educated voter. And it was odd, always um that interest was there right from when I was little,
Mm.
which was really weird. Like, what child ever thinks about this stuff? But somehow I did, and then I was kind of deterred. And then as an adult, dipped my toe in the water a little bit here and there. And anyways, 5.5 years ago, finally had enough and decided, yeah, you know what, it is time to get into this independence movement and do something with it. And then we had the 2019 election, and it exploded, the federal election. It just exploded, and I was a part of that. I was part of Wexit at the time, and then ended up with FCP, Freedom Conservative Party, which then changed its name to Wild Rose Independence Party, which is where you and I met. We were in
Mhm.
the trenches there, and we found out that although historically it's always been egos that were blamed for the independence movement kind of collapsing into itself, and maybe that was the case in the past. I don't know. We weren't there. But yours and mine experience in this last collapse, I think we can call it that. Egos were involved, but I don't think they can necessarily be completely blamed.
No.
They can't be completely blamed. And so we have a different perspective from that experience. And then you and I just continued to stay connected all the way through and kind of like, what do we do now? Because sitting at home is not an option. There's way too much at stake. You and I are both grandmas now. There's even more at stake. And so we kept going until really we just let the Lord lead us and to where what that should look like now. And so here we are back together again on this new project, and I'm super duper excited about it. So now I'm going to let you introduce yourself and the
Mm,
project.
sure. So, let me see. I first got involved with WIPA, so Wild Rose Independence Party. Um, Let me see. That would have been 2020. So it was after COVID, and all the lockdowns and all that stuff. And I had at that time three young people for my children, ranging from age 17 to 22. And I was like super concerned about what I was seeing and how the lockdowns and all the restrictions were affecting them. My first grandchild had just been born in February of 2020. So I was in hyper vigilant grandma mom mode.
Mm-hmm.
And one night was just kind of digging around on the computer, came across WIPA, started reading about some of the values that they had, um, bodily autonomy and property rights and all these different things, but mostly talking about fairness. And, as a mom, you teach your child, like, you play fair.
Mhm.
Fairness is a value. It's an important value. And it was something that I'd seen was definitely missing in the relationship um, between Alberta and the federal government and Alberta and a lot of the other provinces. Um, I'd noticed that for years, that there were things that were very off when it came to fairness. Anyways, I joined, paid
Yep.
paid my $10 membership fee. I've
Yep.
done my civic duty, right? A few
You
months
did.
later, I got a email saying, "Hey, we're going to form a constituency association." I had no idea what a constituency association was. Do you want to come to this online meeting? So I did. And when I left the online meeting, I was the president of the newly formed constituency association. No clue. No, at that point, I had no idea what a CA
Mhm.
was. So, like baptism by fire. But had a really good time learning about the ins and outs of politics and observing. I'm a people watcher, so really observing people and what kinds of people these political parties attract and what kind of people shy away from them and
Mhm.
why, right? And so yeah, the whole thing went down. Maybe that's a whole other podcast, whatever it is
Whole
we're
other
doing.
story. Yeah.
Whole other story. We'll go into it one day as to
Yeah.
why we're quite convinced that Alberta independence will never come through a political party.
Mm-mm.
And there are reasons for that, but we'll go into that later.
Yeah.
Um, let's just say the powers that be benefit from the status quo, and we'll do everything to keep it that way.
Yes, we
So,
will.
anyways, like you said, sitting at home is not an option. And so we've been batting ideas around and with some other folks that were involved as well.
Mhm.
Um, and talking about this new project now, the thought that has really been weighing on my mind lately is that there's that whole group of people in the province that would probably very much agree with the idea of Alberta sovereignty and Alberta independence if they were given facts, if they were given opportunities to feel like they can be a part of it in a quiet way, um, that they can lend their support to that idea.
Mhm.
Um, and oftentimes these are through my experience, I've noticed, and I'm going to speak in generality, so nobody has to like freak out and send me nasty emails or anything. But oftentimes it's women
Mhm.
who they don't want to get into the pig pen. And politics is dirty and nasty. And a lot of these women, they are busy raising their kids and working on their careers and trying to provide for their families. They don't have the time or the inclination to get into that. And so I've been thinking a lot over the last few years as I've worked on a couple other projects in this area about women and about that there is often this determination and this strength that is used for raising families and for building careers and doing all the things that women do. Um, that those attributes would be really helpful when it
Mhm.
comes to standing up for our province and standing up for our ability to provide for our families in a way that we see fit. To be able to develop our natural resources here in Alberta in a very responsible way, to have the freedom to do that,
Yeah.
to be able to use the wealth that we generate to bless those closest to us, our families, our communities, and then going out from there.
Mhm.
And we aren't able to do those things because of the relationship between Alberta and some of the other Western provinces and Confederation. And so what we are doing is we are putting together a group, and I say group because this is
Mhm.
not a political party. We don't have a
Nope.
board. We don't
Nope.
have anything that can be infiltrated
Nope.
or taken down.
Nope.
But what it is it's the Alberta Women's Independence Network, where we have pockets of Albertan women getting together in their homes and in their communities around coffee and tea and cake, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and having discussions about what would Alberta independence look like? Is it even a possibility? What is the legality around
Yeah.
Alberta independence? What are the possibilities of being our own nation? Is it possible? Do we have the resources for that? Do we have the people for that? Do we have the land mass for that? These are all questions that always come up, and
Mm-hmm.
objections. And it's like, mm, you know what? We can have very just civil, kind, loving discussions with each other,
Yeah.
and gather those who do stand for fairness and who do want to protect their families from what has been coming down the tubes for so long, and what is going to continue coming down, and far worse, I think, with what we're seeing is happening federally.
Exactly. Exactly. And a comfortable place to have these conversations, right? And that was, I think, when you and I were first talking about this and batting around ideas, it's that comfort zone, because this discussion takes people out of their comfort zone. So let's
Yes.
get back around the kitchen table or the dining room table or the coffee table or the whatever, and just across the province, start dreaming. Start
Yeah.
thinking about, well, what could this look like? Why would it look like that? And just as you said, what are the obstacles? Because there will be. This is
Hmm.
not going to be an easy ride, obviously, but
But
it
neither is
doesn't,
the alternative.
the alternative is worse. But
I
why is it worse? Right? Like, I mean, you and I, we've already had a couple of these times, of these coffee times together with groups of women, and found out what they're already thinking. Like, we already got to taste it a little bit
Yeah.
to see what's coming. And a lot of it is, well, the two things that stood out to me so far, and you tell me if it's the same or if it was different, is one, well, I don't have time to learn all of this, which is fair. And the second one was actually a little bit of fear and intrepidation once they began to learn about it.
Hmm.
Right? What do you mean this is what our government structure looks like? What do you mean this is how it's set up? What do you mean we literally have no voice in the Senate now? What does that look like? How come? How did that happen? What do you mean we don't have as many seats as I thought we did in the House of Commons? What do you mean we don't? And it just really kind of revealed to me there's so many reasons why none of this is taught in school.
Yeah. Right.
So
And that's the craziest thing, is that we're talking to women who have been Canadians their whole life.
all lives,
Right?
yep,
And I mean, we're in the same boat. Canadians our
yep,
whole life. So we had a meeting last week, um, with some ladies from my community, and you joined us on Zoom,
yeah,
and going over some real basics, like what is the problem, right?
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
one of my neighbors who moved here from Ontario last year, she was there, and she said, and I'll never forget this because it just kind of hit me. First, she said, "Mind blown."
yes,
When we showed
yeah,
her, well, I have it right here. When we showed her this cute little map. Oh no, you can't quite see it. But anyways, this map showing all the seat allocations
yes,
across across the country. And she said, but the thing that really hit me that she said was, I always knew something was not quite right, but I didn't know what it was until
mm-hmm,
now. Now I understand what is wrong in this country.
yeah,
And it's like, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
but you don't know until you know, right?
yeah, that's just it. And even provincially, like, it's still part of the same system.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not to say, oh, well, our provincial government can do A, B, C, X, Y, Z. Not really,
Mm-hmm.
not really, because it's still part of the same system. And
Yeah.
so how do we change that? How do we get enough people on board to be brave enough to say, you know what, I'm willing to look at something different. At
Yeah.
least look at it. I don't think we necessarily have time on our side,
Mm,
honestly. So this is why we thought, well, let's just do this. Let's just get people talking. That's exactly what they tried to do in COVID, was shut us up so that we weren't talking. And they did that
right.
on purpose.
Yeah.
So we need to get people discussing the ideas. What are the challenges? What are the different things that we're going to face? And one of the things that I heard in a podcast that I was listening to this morning, when Quebec was going through all of this, and it was getting really, really nasty over there. And I didn't know this. I need to research this much more because I learned a lot. One of the tactics, one of the fear tactics they used was they had a whole bunch of Brinks trucks lined up at the banks saying, well, we're going to take your money if you're going to leave.
Oh my heck. Well, we got to be prepared for that.
So we got to be ready. Like, okay, well, challenge accepted,
Yeah.
right? And if there's enough of us that are ready to say, okay, challenge accepted, whatever, we'll figure it out,
Yeah.
then we're good. It goes right back to the Alberta roots, like everybody came here from somewhere else with nothing, like not even 50 cents in their back pocket, and they all work together to figure it out.
And that's the beauty of Albertans, the
Mm-hmm.
innovation.
Yeah.
Like you and I both lived in Fort McMurray at different times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who would have ever thought that that black goop that oozes out of the side of the riverbank on a hot sunny day,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? That they would be able to do what they're doing with it and in the way that they're doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, that the innovation is fantastic. And yes, I know so many people get caught up on the nitty-gritty details. Well, what about this? What about this? What? And it's like, we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it
Figure
out.
it out. But first, we have to come to a realization of the problem because you can't fix something that you don't know or that you
Yeah,
won't acknowledge.
that's right.
So that's the first thing. And we can do that. We don't have to fearmonger. We don't have to put giant like and this is fine. If people do this, that's fine. But my way of doing this is not to have a giant rant on X and laced with F-bombs and we'll lose if that's the only approach that we take to this. One, we'll never get anywhere, and
No.
two, we're losing three-quarters of the population who looks at that and says, I can't get on board with that. It's not telling me anything. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
what do I do with that? Right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. That appeals to some people, and that's good. And there's other methods that are going to appeal to other people. But what we're looking at is a whole cohort of Albertans who have strength, who need hope, who
Mm-hmm.
need to know that there are options and there are choices. And it doesn't take that long to learn about this because you can learn about it in your living room with your neighbors over a cup
Exactly.
of coffee.
And there's no test at the end. You don't
There's no
have to
test.
worry. There's no pass or fail.
Yeah.
It's just,
And we're not asking to buy membership and we're not passing
no.
a hat or anything like that. It's just come join us. Let's
Yeah.
have a conversation. Let's get together and let's just do this. And I just envision like pockets of women all over the province just getting together,
Mm-hmm.
realizing that there is hope, that there is opportunity here. There is such opportunity here.
Huge, huge opportunity. And that's why the independence movement has never really died.
No.
It's always been in the background. And over the last 5 years, it has remained consistent between 30 and 40%
Mm-hmm.
who want it. So the foundation is already there. It's just getting enough people to want to know more about it,
Mm,
to be able to make that informed decision. And that's the thing, don't make the decision based on fear. Don't make the decision based on somebody else pushing you into it. Be informed. Be informed. And I think that was the other thing when we discussed this. There's no call to action at the end other than just learn about it.
yeah.
That's it. That's it. Nobody's, as like you said, no membership. Nobody's asking you for money. Nobody's nothing. We just really believe that more people need to know what's going on, why it's there, why it's happening, and that
Mm,
there is a way to get over this trial and tribulation onto the other side.
yeah.
without completely destroying everything. And I'm afraid if we don't do this, well, then it is gonna get ugly really quick. So that's why, right? We just thought, well, we're good at talking. That's what women do. All the men complain about it all the time. So we'll just we'll just get our 14,000 words out with each other
There
and
you
help
go.
one another figure it out.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think at the same like, and I mentioned this to you before we started recording. At the end of the day, everybody wants the same thing. We all want to be safe. We want to feel safe. We want our families to feel safe. It doesn't matter what end of the political spectrum you're on. That's what we want. What that looks like is where the differences are found. And
Right.
that was kind of the genesis of, well, then let's get talking. What is safe to you? Is remaining in Confederation where you don't know from one day to the next what your future holds or who's going to be your prime minister or how your prime minister is even going to get voted in? You don't get a choice on how they're voted in. Um, or does security look much different than that? So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm encouraged. It'll be
I am
good.
too. And I'm very, very curious to see
Mm-hmm.
where this goes. Yeah, so we're starting in southwestern Alberta, where I am.
Yep.
Tonight, we're having our first official meeting. We have a bunch of ladies coming over to my house.
Yay.
We're gonna sit around and eat some banana bread.
Yum, yum. I have actually just right outside of Sherwood Park, because that's where I live, is in Sherwood Park. So I've already got a lady here ready to host
Awesome.
and go to town. So it's already
Yep.
spreading. And then I think there's some others that you and I we've crossed paths with along the way that we'll see if they're
Oh
ready
yeah.
to jump back in and just figure out another way to do this, because it is a political problem. It requires a political solution. That's just how it is. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a political party.
Right. And here's the thing with our group. We will support any politician who has the political will
Mm-hmm.
to step up and to say, yeah, we are going to be pursuing Alberta autonomy. And that doesn't mean that we have a referendum tomorrow. I think we have to be pretty smart about that. It's not like you get a
Right.
referendum every year. You don't get a do-over if you fail.
That's
Um,
right.
and so it's got the timing has to be right, but there are a lot of things that need to be put in place
Yeah.
for then, and that
Yeah.
can be put in place right now. We're talking about provincial police force or um, the
Pensions.
pension plan, the provincial pension plan, all these different things that Quebec has had in place for a long time. We can do
Oh,
it too.
do you want to know what else I learned this morning?
Hmm.
Ah, I shouldn't even say this because it's just gonna make me mad and want to swear. I was finding out that they were talking about the difference between how well the Canada pension plan is done versus the Quebec pension plan.
It can make me cry, I know.
Even you'll swear, and you don't. Um, there was like the Quebec pension plan has done 3 times at least, 3 times more, brought in
Yeah.
3 times more with a fraction of the people.
Yeah.
So,
Not surprising. Not surprising. So these are things that we can discuss, and it all comes down to like facts like that. You can
yeah,
back it up with the numbers. You can
yeah,
show the receipts. You know what I'm saying? Like,
exactly.
and that's the thing that we really want to focus on is that there are things that we can lay out. We can lay out a very rational reasoning
Yep,
for why this is necessary.
yep,
And we can show you all kinds of examples around the world where countries have become sovereign,
yep.
countries have split into two, and what has become of those countries. Um, all these things. But while we're talking about that, I just feel like we need to address something,
Mm,
and that is the real um pain, the real hurt that comes with the idea of separating from Canada.
mm,
And
mhm.
I mean, like you and I have been involved and we've been having these conversations for years now. So we're kind of beyond that point. But I
Mhm.
often think about this as a divorce. And again, because I'm a woman, I'll use a woman as an example. And I've been through a divorce in a not good situation, um, where you stick it out for years and years and years as you're looking at it from every single angle, thinking, well, maybe if this changes, then this will change. Or
Mhm.
maybe if we get a new conservative government in, then this and this and this will change. Not realizing that there's underlying issues that cannot be addressed
Right.
from these surface changes. And it's
Mhm.
eventually you get to the point where you realize, as painful as it is to come to that realization, that there is nothing you can do to change the situation until the other party is willing to open that up and change it as well. And we're at a point in Confederation where the Western provinces are realizing the Eastern provinces that hold that balance of power are never going to let that go. And so eventually you get to the point where you have to accept, yeah, I've been a proud Canadian for so many years and I love my country and I love these different things about it. And that country no longer exists.
It doesn't.
And so you go down with the sinking ship, or do you stand up on your own 2 feet and you say, okay, time to time to accept this and time to
Yeah.
move on to it. And so I think that we have to acknowledge that that's
Mhm.
painful. That's a painful thing to come to. And we need to acknowledge that and say, okay, now we're here, we're standing together, we're strong, we're independent. I know that sounds like a trope, right? Strong, independent women, but, but
Well,
we are
it
strong,
does, but yeah.
yes, and we're fiercely independent,
Yeah.
personally and as communities. You kind of have to be when you live in Alberta.
Well, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you totally do. And I honestly think that it's so much bigger than just Alberta. And I've said this a
Mhm.
handful of times that, okay, there's that, this romanticism about the country of Canada and this is my home and so on and so forth. But I think right now we have an obligation to set that aside, to set that romanticism, those emotions aside and think about the people
Mhm.
within the nation. And it's not going to matter where you live at this point. It's going to get bad. It's going to get bad. So if we want to save the people, then let's put people before country.
Yep.
And I think that's a tough one, right? That's a
Yep.
tough one. Because it's quite backwards. Like if you look at, our southern neighbors in the US, oh my goodness, they don't come much more patriotic, right?
Right.
It's country above all else. And so you kind of think that maybe that's how it's supposed to be. But I think here in Canada, we were how Canada was created was very, very different than how the US was created as a
Yes.
country. The histories are not the same. And so we have an obligation to put people before country right now. And the best way to do that is to put people first. And here in Alberta, put Albertans first,
Mm-hmm.
Albertans first, not even the province, put the people first,
Yeah.
and give us permission to do that. There's nothing wrong with it. Nothing.
No. No. And I mean, if that's, I mean, it comes down again, and talking about women. I mean,
Hmm.
moms learn very quickly that if you don't look after yourself,
You're
you
done.
can't, you can't look after those around you. You
No.
can't.
Yeah.
And it goes the same way. Like as Albertans, we have incredible wealth or opportunities to build wealth, not to become rich, but to be able to care for our families,
Mhm.
care for our communities, and then to extend that care out, right? But
Yeah.
if we, right now as it stands, we've got the federal government who's just giving away billions of dollars to who knows who or what or whatever, and yet we have homeless situations in our very own cities, or we have the biggest use of food banks historically
Mhm.
ever in Canada. Like, we've got it all backwards and all wrong, and so it's time that we kind of pull together as a province and to say, "You know what? These are our values." And number 1 is, like you said, Kathy, like, we're caring for our own,
Yeah,
and then it extends from there.
exactly. Exactly. So that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah,
One coffee and glass of wine at a time.
I love it. I love it. It's gonna be great. So, like, if people have questions like, "Well, how does this work?" or whatever, really in the beginning, we know that, we could use technology, we could use Zoom, we could have Zoom meetings and all that stuff, and in some cases, that's the way it's gonna have to be because
Mhm.
Alberta is such a huge province. But really, as much as possible, we wanna have those in-person, face-to-face
Yeah.
conversations and discussions, and I've lived all over this province. I've lived in the Peace River area, Fort
Mhm.
McMurray, Edmonton, Calgary, Lethbridge area, you know, anyways, lived all over,
Yeah.
and have car, will drive type of thing. I love
Ditto.
province.
Yep.
And
Yep.
ditto, yeah. And so if there are folks that want us to come and do a coffee session with you, we would love to do that.
Mhm.
And it's networking. So, like, I've had some people say to me, as I've talked to neighbors and stuff, "Oh, you need to talk to this person," and they'll tell me about their
Mhm.
their friend in Lethbridge or whatever who would really be interested in this. And I'm like, "Well, hang on. This is where we're networking. So I don't
Yeah.
know that person, but you do. You have a connection with them. And so
Mhm.
you go ahead and contact them, and we'll arrange to get together somehow." And so I'm just hoping that it's this little spreading, growing thing that just covers the whole province eventually.
Exactly. And I think it will because there is a hunger to talk about it.
Mhm.
There really is. Like when I'm out volunteering in the community, it's shocking to me how many people go, "What?" As soon as, because I don't ever bring anything up, but somebody else will, and it's like, okay, now I gotta talk about it. And
Right.
and I mean that happened this morning. Somebody brought up data centers,
Mm.
data centers coming to Alberta, and they were really quite annoyed with the whole idea.
Mm.
And they thought that, well, if these data centers come, they take up so much power, then our power bill is going to go through the roof. And I let the person just say everything that they knew to be true. And then I said, well, wait a minute. The homework that I did on data centers, it's actually da 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 da. And I told him what I knew. And he says, oh, well, that's way different than what I was told. And I think that's what, like, that's just an example of what we're going to run into every time we
100%.
get together, right? When we're across the province. Well, that's not what I was told. Well, that's not how I remember it, or that's not. And so there's nothing. That's the thing, right? When people start talking politics, immediately I get this picture in my head of this political scrap that takes place between right and left, and the punches start getting thrown,
The
and the
name
words.
calling.
Oh yeah, like all left, right, and center, literally. And I'm so over it.
Mm.
I mean, if you're on Twitter with me and you want to get in a good scrap, I'm open for that. But you know, I just sense there's such an appetite for just conversation,
Yeah.
and that's all we want to do is just have conversation. So wherever you are in the province of Alberta, whatever platform you're watching this on, get a hold of either Angela or I,
Mhm.
and let's get you connected. Just message us on that platform and we will find you people to connect with, or we'll work with you to find others to connect with. Whatever
We will
that,
do.
yeah, whatever that looks like. But let's get the coffee brewing and the banana bread cooking and figure this out and figure it out together and get our questions answered and find out what can our future actually look like and what can it look like for our kids and our grandbabies. Um, because what's going on right now isn't it, and it can't be.
Right. No, it can't. and it can't go on much longer.
No, no, it can't. So yeah, it's good. So let us know if you guys are ready to also get your questions answered in a very comfortable surrounding, comfortable setting where there's no mudslinging, there's no none of that. We just want to help you guys know what's going on out there and learn ourselves. Every day I learn something new.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. There's so much information out there, and it's really like, okay, what is applicable? What
yeah,
is most valuable? That
yeah.
type of thing. Um, but yeah, so yeah, we're gonna have like we are putting up a Facebook page today. It's gonna be very minimal. And I don't think we
Hmm.
need to go into the details as to why Facebook isn't that conducive or great for something like this. Um, we are putting up an X page, hoping to get that up today as well. And we'll be feeding information onto there. Both Kathy and I have X counts that
Hmm.
are mostly focused on Alberta independence. And we do have a lot of other connections that we've had through WIPA and stuff, other women that I'm sure would be more than willing to contribute to our Alberta Women's Independence Network page on
Yeah,
X. So hoping to make that like a real hub for information and networking.
yeah,
Um, and so, yeah, you can reach us through the Facebook, you can reach us through
yeah,
X.
yeah.
We are going to have an email list that we are compiling. And I guess in terms of membership, we will count our membership as, our email list, how many people have we got on the email list type of
Hmm.
thing. Um, but again, really the main focus is getting together and having these face-to-face discussions and just feeling that friendship and that strength from each other.
Exactly, exactly. And even if you find you're in a group of people that you're not going to agree on everything, well, so what? You could, like, so what? Get over it.
Yeah, yeah, it
Be
can
friends
still be,
anyway.
yeah, exactly. It can still be a
Hmm.
fantastic conversation and you can still, we always have, like you said, Kathy, everybody wants the same thing.
Yeah.
And there is that in itself, that is values, right? And we can build on those
Hmm.
values, that those shared values that we have, and discuss, yeah, how do we get there?
Yeah.
How are we looking at this?
Yeah. Exactly. It's an empowerment, right? Because knowledge is
Mm.
power.
Yeah,
It's true. I mean, I think there was some sort of cartoon commercial about that when we were kids, but it is true. It
yeah,
is true. And it's also true that once you've got that knowledge, you have to do something with it.
it is true. You can't unsee some things.
You can't, and you can't
No.
unlearn some things. And then I have a feeling what's going to happen is as more and more people are learning about our government structure, about how it's designed, the way it's designed, the reason it's designed that way, and why we need to really look at making some pretty significant changes to that. Um, it is it can be overwhelming.
Sure.
It can be overwhelming, but it's also kind of neat because there's a lot of history there. Like
Yeah,
what happened? How did we get to this place? And it's kind of fun to learn too.
right. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's true. Maybe we're just nerds that way, but I'm sure there's other nerds out there that wouldn't mind joining us.
Well, maybe. I mean, I'm only a nerd now. It isn't. If I was this interested, I might not have dropped out of high school twice. But
There you go. Now you see a use for it.
well, that's it. Well, I mean, I guess, and that speaks to it too. Like, if it had been interesting, I may not have, right?
There you go.
So
Right?
says something. I don't know what it's like now in school, but yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, again, everybody, if you're interested in this, get a hold of either Angela or I, doesn't matter, both, whatever. Wherever you're seeing this, whichever platform you're seeing this on, and let's get you guys connected. That's what it's all about. It's all about connections. It's all about connections.
Absolutely love it.
Right on. Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it, Angela. And I'm so honored to be working with you again because you're just amazing. So
Hey,
it's gonna be
ditto.
good.
Ditto for sure. Thank you so much, Kathy. Really appreciate your time.
And you.
Hmm.
See you
Okay.
soon.
All right then.